And yeah, I'll now let Nikos introduce himself, allow screen sharing, and I'm going to go on mute. Nikos, the stage is yours.
Okay, hello everybody. Thanks for joining us today. By the way, if you want to show your camera, it's always helpful to see audience reactions, but it's not a requirement. It's just a benefit for me and probably some of yourselves as well. So basically, I'm a biophysics graduate. I did 5 years of science, worked in neuroscience laboratory, but I decided that I liked software development more than the lab work. So basically, I'm self-taught web developer, and then basically I worked in London for about 12 years. 5 years working for MoneyCorp, writing financial software using a mixture of languages. Actually it was Adobe Flash, HTML, Cold Fusion, SQL Server, and then I basically moved into contracting pretty soon after that. And I've been mostly a sort of front-end developer / full stack developer using things like React, TypeScript, AngularJS, Ember.js, and Node. Microsoft Technologies, Google Cloud, and I've worked in around 8 or so different companies as a contractor, but also I have private clients as well. And I've had various roles. So obviously, when I started off, I was a junior developer, but I've also worked as senior developer and also led teams, consulted with companies, led small teams, mentored developers. So I've quite a varied experience, mostly on the senior developer level, but just watching how the different levels work together and trying to form patterns that I can try and share to you guys so that you have some value here and you can take it away to your own teams. So if you any kind of can share your role or what you're doing in the comments, I will probably focus on that more. But if not, I'll just go ahead with the slides and share. So I'll just share my screen and hopefully you can see that. Just shutting down my IMs, of course. Right. I use so many different software sometimes, forget to how the things work. So, okay, desktop share. Can you see okay?
All good.
Okay, cool. So the title of this thing changes because, working in software development is quite dynamic, and there's sort of at all levels, there's sort of different patterns you can observe, whether it's small teams or large teams, big companies, small teams. So I've tried to basically condense these down into things that you can recognize and act upon them. So basically, these are the main kind of big global observations that I can throw at you. And then in the second part, we'll do more kind of focused on the people level things. So basically, software projects are basically operating at the extreme human intellect level. It's one of the most complicated challenges in life to design software, because it's not even just like making a piece of machinery that has to run, for like 10, 15 years. Software is just like a living, breathing organism, and it needs so much care to design, because when you write code, it stays in the system. It doesn't go somewhere. It doesn't get replaced. If you have to replace code, it often causes issues with other parts of the code. So we have to really approach it in a scientific way and methodical way. And, it takes a lot of leadership, And you as a leader in your company, it's your job to allocate the resources and direct them in a certain way that will basically, get the company to work in the software to work together as different parts, because you can have sort of companies with all the different pieces there, but if they're not operating efficiently and together, you're going to waste a lot of time and money. And I've seen that over and over again. And this is one of my favorite games of all time. Oops. That was me, my exam here. 2 seconds, just get my camera. Okay. There we are. So what are the different components of developer teams? So there's basically 4 parts that are, in a sense, every normal developer team. But, outside of that, there's other things in sort of larger companies. Can you still hear me okay? Yeah.
All good.
So you have your tech leads, you have your senior to mid-level developers, you have junior developers, and you have testers. So we have to basically get all these pieces to work together in a way that's going to give best business outcomes for your company. So world-class tech leads and team unity is basically what's going to drive profits. And that's ultimately what the goal of good software is that the business and the shareholders have value. And that's pretty much it. It's all to do with money, right? So, and obviously advancing people's careers and making people feel happy and good, but it's all ultimately a money issue. And in terms of when these things are not done right, you can have companies can lose so much money because you can, if you're in a large company, FTSE 100 company, you can be making so much money that the money wasted in software development can actually be hidden from shareholders and things like that. So I just want to try and expose some of these things, not by naming any names or any companies, but it's just something you have to be aware of because it happens over and over again. And as a contractor, normally when if companies are employing contractors, sometimes there's problems because in an ideal world, you wouldn't need to hire contractors. You'd have permanent employees and pay them half of what the contractors are. So you sort of get exposed quite a lot to issues. Mind you, that said, when the market's really buoyant and dynamic like it is now, then that can doesn't really hold that true. So here's one thing that I've noticed is that C-levels are reluctant to change directions from technical decisions. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Firstly, sometimes bad decisions can take years to fall apart. Sometimes it's just going to look bad for that C-level person if they've basically wasted millions of pounds. And there isn't really any upside for that individual to basically say, hey, I've made a mistake. The last 2 years of code needs to be rewritten. Okay, so if there isn't the correct leadership structure and reporting structure and accountability, basically you can end up with this ship with all this code base. If you can imagine the ship is like the code and the technical energy and momentum in this code base, you have this really big ship and it's very hard to turn it away, and there can be an iceberg coming along and it's just going to end up there sometimes. So that typically happens in the larger the code base, the larger the company, the larger the investment. But basically, ultimately, the bad code leads to thousands, if not millions, of pounds of loss, and you end up with something spaghetti code. And what happens is that the code just keeps getting added to and added to and added to, and it takes new developers like 6 months to 3 months to get up to speed with the code base. And then by the time they've got up to speed to the code base, they're basically they're becoming better at the code base, and then they leave, find a different contract. And you get this sort of churn of people just stirring the spaghetti. It's crazy, it really is. I don't know if anyone's experienced that.
I know I have.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about it?
Yeah, I've been involved many times in projects where there's lots of technical debt, and quite often that's the result of either inexperienced developers or trying to catch up with timelines. Yeah, but in one way or another, all this debt is gonna come back later and haunt you.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, working as a contractor is one of the annoying things that you basically deal with all this technical debt all the time, and it's quite hard psychologically, and lowers your motivation to get the energy out. So these are basically the results of some of the root causes of what this bad technical debt is. So basically, sometimes you have, especially with startups, where you have a few big clients, and the big client comes along and says, I want this feature here, and the project manager will say, yes, we can deliver this, but the actual software was never really designed with that idea and outlook, and the actual feature doesn't really add. It's a kind of unique feature just for that small subset of applications, and the complexity to the code base is actually a bigger hit than the software. It's always a balance in software. Whenever it's not if you can imagine complexity and amount of code, it's not like a linear line where you're adding a new feature and it goes up in a straight line like this. It's actually, it looks a lot more like this. The more features you add, the more exponentially complicated the code base becomes to understand for developers and maintain. And it doesn't matter what kind of developer you're at, the more code there is, the more complicated it is exponentially. Now, some people's complexity curve might look like this. Some might look, a bit less than that, but it's always feature creep is a big issue. There's also time pressures. There's there's often not enough time to refactor things, because if you think about it, if you're a Scrum manager and you have, say, a feature to roll out, and they're expecting delivery, and if you tell the Scrum manager, hey, look, we need to refactor this for 2 weeks, versus just the Scrum manager saying, no, just fix it now, we'll fix it later. It's always the small wins. It's like politicians, you basically do the short-term things to keep the voters happy, and then someone down the line is going to basically pay for all the debt and the economy and fix those things. It happens a lot in software as well. So in a sense, part 2, I want to talk about, we're actually almost at the half-hour mark already. Sheesh. So this kind of, when we do proper sessions, we'll allow proper feedback. You can share your ideas, because I'm not preaching at you, telling you this is the truth. Sometimes there's different ways to agree on things. So if you're in charge of a team, how do you use these people effectively? So these are some of the strategies that I've learned, developed, and seen. So in a sense, the technical lead has to really plan ahead, and he needs to have accountability with his team members, so that he can change his ideas if they're wrong, going down the wrong way. It's very bad if you get someone who's like a dictator. He's like, no, you need to do this. We're going to have this features, this framework, this micro front ends, and all this kind of stuff. And then if they're hiring a consultancy, sometimes they'll be telling them they want it done this way, and the consultancy will go back to them and say, this is a bad idea, this is a bad idea, and say, no, you got to do it right. So you need to basically, before you sit down and write software, you need to think, do I have as many possibilities to adapt software as possible in the future? And it's important to do your research, your software research, your feature research, as well as, almost like if you're a startup, you want to do markets, into the markets, you need to do market research to see if your product's going to be well. Same with software, you need to think about all the ways that software could possibly grow, and design that into your code base. Otherwise, you're basically designing junk code that will be thrown away one day, and it happens all the time. It's just how it is. So these are basically some leadership tips I want to kind of teach you leaders here. So leadership is, in a sense, is not an end in itself. Some people want to just become leaders because it's good for their ego, but in a sense, leadership is something that it's like a calling. It's a way to get people together on a common purpose. It's just a tool. So sometimes people can be leaders for a while, and somebody better can come along, and for the company, it's better for them. It's not to do with your career, it's to do with the company ultimately, and that's how you get good code bases. But also, good leadership helps a lot with in the company, employee happiness, customer satisfaction, and ultimately shareholder value. So how do you basically pick a tech lead for your company? So there's different things you can look for. So obviously, a long history of successful technical roles is important. GitHub is important, like having a following on there, seeing people sometimes this isn't possible, of course, if you're a busy guy. Sometimes the more senior leaders get, the less activity there'll be on their GitHub. So, it's a balancing act there. But typically, if you do see someone on GitHub with a following, then that's a good sign already. Obviously, you need to know how to play a long-term game in a code base, because code base is never really about short-term fixes. It's always, because the code you write today is the code that's going to be there 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the future. And if you're just writing code that's designed to be thrown away, then you shouldn't be writing code. And obviously, people skills and are important as well. Another important thing in software teams is all levels, basically having mentoring and knowledge sharing efficiently. Unfortunately, most programmers are not very good at mentoring others or sharing or helping others. It's quite a selfish thing. And I wish I could say in human nature, people are are helpful and willing to mentor others, but in general, people have a very poor way of communicating knowledge, and it's really bad for juniors, because juniors basically get embarrassed to ask questions if the person trying to explain things doesn't do it effectively. So often what happens with people that are inexperienced in teaching, and this can be a senior developer to a junior developer, the senior person has institutional blindness or knowledge blindness. They know the product problem so well that they're saying to the junior guy or girl, look at this code, this is how it works, and you understand, and the junior developer says, yeah, and then he'll go away, be confused, and then he'll be embarrassed to ask more questions again. So that's basically something you can teach from the top down through all levels. You can have tech leads mentoring seniors and seniors mentoring juniors, and maybe juniors mentoring testers, that kind of thing. It's a sort of company culture of sharing knowledge is important to instill, to get value from your employees, or whoever it is. So technical leaders in companies should also almost be like father figures, because we can have personal issues in our lives. We can have problems in the code base, insecurities, and a lot of times in companies, people will talk behind their backs, and they won't discuss the issues, and people will basically be going on and on for months and months until they leave the company, and things don't get started. So you should basically foster that attitude of open communication, where there's not backbiting, and it's something that you can design from your leadership. So yeah, other traits that leaders can get is basically comfortable learning skills from developers and niche skills. Sometimes people are insecure if they're at architect level. Who's this person teaching me what to do? It's sort of a I don't know what it is. It's like a pride thing. Like, we're the consultancy. We don't need advice from you. We're not changing things. We know better. So being able to take process advice from team members is important. So like I said, software leadership can really be replicated as a fractal. So a fractal it kind of looks the same from the top down. So you can, no matter how, if you're the CTO of a, FTSE 100 company, you'll have your sphere of, 20 or 30 people where you can mentor. And if you're good at that, then their team will be able to have the same kind of leadership, their level, and it can sort of work its way down a company. This, I think Elon Musk does a good job of that. I've not worked for the guy, but I think he's instills that sort of top-down leadership that sort of factors down and increases the overall efficiency of the company. Okay, so senior developers, there's a sort of blurry line between senior developers and tech leads, but the senior developer maybe is more focused on just the code, doesn't really have business skills or something like that. Any questions? I'm just going to check to see if there's any questions or comments on the Zoom.
No questions so far.
Okay. I'm really flying through stuff here. I really am. So it's kind of interactive workshop. The last time I did this in London, I did it in Porsche Mayfair, and it was round table. It was really fun. We learned a lot of things together. So senior developers are, in a sense, they maybe not got as much business skill as the tech lead, because the tech lead really has to understand business as well and be able to communicate. But basically, you're looking for these skilled developers that are outputting more value than they're being paid. And there's quite a large variety of different skill levels for the same price, in a sense. And that's really the job of recruiters, to find those best value developers for your company. So these are some of the traits of senior developers. They're able to take complicated problems and reduce them down to simple block pieces of code, because in a sense, every technical problem can be reduced down to code eventually, unless it's something like having a pure analog clock, which is impossible unless you have some kind of chemical reaction or something like that. But anyway, all computer programs in general can be reduced down to simple things, and that takes a skill. They can explain their work to juniors as well, and also explain it to Scrum Masters and also business people that maybe have a choice. But this isn't against, it's more the business side is more kind of tech lead. But they can also understand business priorities and offer direction to the company, feedback to the tech lead, to the other stakeholders, and not be obsessed with their solution. They respect the shareholder value. And it's like a game of, is it like a, very strategic, actually, I can't remember, I put that picture in there. I'll change that word later on. So yeah, they're really good at debugging situations. So senior developers can in a sense find the problem for any piece of code, and not be blocked on it. And sometimes it can take pairs of senior developers or to get the problem. But debugging is an important part of being a senior dev, and you should look for that in your senior developers. And like I says, they're able to help junior developers and be able to communicate the ideas as well. And contractors are not always the best engineers. That's true. So these are some of the supporting parts of developer teams you need to be aware of. And these are typically maybe companies that are larger than a startup, but sometimes you'll have architects, and that's almost like a role that I would like to get to, because it's almost some architects I've heard it being described as contractor's paradise. Don't write any code, and you basically go to there and you produce diagrams and you see people do this and that. Another case, I've seen architects that work really hard and they're actually doing hands-on code. So these are things that you come along. Product owner, yeah, that's typically more kind of larger companies where they have to have these sort of business processes and reporting up and down the chain. Sometimes a lot of these roles in larger companies, it seems a bit top heavy to me, because you have like an inverse pyramid. You have a few developers at the bottom, and then all these business people there that are creating these jobs, which a lot of the times I don't really think they're that worth a lot of, like for example, agile. I think agile is, I've seen a lot of agile processes, but there's nothing agile about it, because basically you're working with a bad code base, and all you're doing with agile is patching this code with more crap code, and it's agile because you have a scrum meeting, so there's nothing agile about it. There's no way to refactor the code. There's no change direction from the technology if it's the wrong technology. So it's just a bunch of, I'm not that big on the word agile. So if I had to have a company start up, I wouldn't bother with all those scrum masters and product owners and all this stuff. I would make it much more lean. But anyway, FTSE 100 companies love agile processes. So hopefully I'm not offending too many people there, but that's what I find, is you get this inverse pyramid, few developers at the bottom, and all these processes to just support all these jobs that don't really produce anything really. So anyway, these things require a larger budget. Yeah, and it's in bigger companies. So yeah, these are more principles in leadership. So great teams need great leadership. Leadership will hold your teams together in crises, because there are sometimes civil wars in code bases. Clear vision will guide your hiring. Your leadership will set the tone for your teams. Great leaders are flexible in their approach to individuals, and they're experts at de-escalation. Any questions so far? Okay.
No questions. Okay.
So when you're hiring a tech lead, basically you got to get the money out, because the right tech lead is worth. It's hard to describe how important the right guy is or girl is, because they're setting the direction of the ship. And if the ship goes the wrong direction, it doesn't matter how good the ship is or how many good people are in the ship. So if you're going to waste money, waste it mostly on the tech lead, the guy who's doing the making the big decisions, because the right person at the top can it's like Elon Musk and Tesla. He's the guy. So sometimes there'll be like democracies where you have a few tech leads and they can do the job together. That's fine as well. Yeah. So you basically need to hire someone that's more than equal to the task, because investment here will cover itself many times over, and guide the long-term decision, of the company, and happy days. So in terms of just hiring general programmers, these are some traits you might want to be aware of this type of people group. So there's been research done, psychological research, that software developers are more introverted than the general population. They like working in nice office environments. Not kind of a people. They actually prefer working from home. But when we had offices, they like things to keep their mind stimulated, because developers can get bored quite easily. They can get bored with bad code bases. Like, it can be psychologically difficult for them that they're just working in this crappy code. So having a pool table or a table tennis table just to get the, it might cost you a bit of money, might cost a bit of time, but you're actually saving money because you're psychologically benefiting software developer just to have those little things. They don't even cost that much. So that's why Google are always, putting beds out there and like, arcade games and stuff like that. It's not just for, it's psychological strategy. Yeah. Okay, 10 minutes. So we'll have some time for questions. So I'm going to do another 5 minutes, and I'm going to have the floor open for questions. Okay, so I've got a lot of slides here, but it's a 1 hour session. So a software team without a clear tech lead will not have a clear sense of direction. That's being established. Democracies in large software companies, sometimes they operate a lot slower, because sometimes you can have a tech lead that's not confident and he wants to please everybody, and so everything takes a lot of time to decide things, and that can sometimes be an issue as well. Then again, dictatorships with a weak tech lead are even worse. So your leadership, humility, and vision, strong tech lead, that's what you want when you want to hire a guy to run your software company or build your products for you. So part 3 is case studies. Maybe I'll just touch on 1 or 2 of them, and then we'll get over to some questions, I think. So this is a startup that I worked with on existing code on a Chrome extension. So this was basically designed as a startup, and what happened was that they wanted to do everything in the one code base. So they put all the technology into this one code base, and then I came in there because they were having problems trying to develop it, and I was trying to split it up into microservices. But basically I spent 2 or 3 weeks there, and it was that complicated, and I was getting paid so much money that they couldn't afford to keep me on to do it properly. So in a sense, they're probably still stuck with that code base, where because it wasn't designed up into microservices to start, to have different parts, then their code base basically ended up a spaghetti carbonara. Sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. So this is sometimes that I've discovered is that I was in a situation in a company where I was getting sort of semi-abuse from a tester, and maybe because I was being a bit lazy, but it was becoming toxic on Skype, the Skype chat, where the team basically, I was getting blamed for things, and there was sort of escalation of like tit for tat, and it was affecting me emotionally, affecting her emotionally. So basically, thankfully I had a tech lead. He spotted that, and he came in and basically says, basically take one for the team and stop this. We understand it's not good, but I'll maybe deal with it behind, talk to the person. But it's important to spot these things, because these things can spread, and bad unity can spread quicker, and you probably won't even be aware of anything that's going on behind your back as a team, and bad attitudes. So it's important to spot these things. Yeah, so I mean, I could talk about recruitment. That's a big issue, team branding, but I think I'm just going to pause it there and just open the floor up for questions, because I'm probably going too quick for you guys right now. Another 30 slides. Anyone agree with what I'm saying, or any feedback or anything?
I think it's very useful on many different levels. It's unfortunate that most of our participants have not shared any details about the background, because it would be good to understand the different experiences they had with software developers. What I can definitely say is that what you're describing here, I've also experienced this in data science. Yeah, so I think that some of the principles and the learnings here, they expand on other related disciplines to software of any kind, not only traditional software development. I see we have one question from Kevin.
Question.
Kevin, where would you start to change that? Yeah.
if you have a spaghetti code base, where would you start to change that? Yes, so unfortunately, the prognosis is not very good because your business. What level are you, Kevin? If I can ask. Director level. Shareholder or just director? Okay, that's interesting. So the trouble is that your shareholders, stakeholders are not going to really appreciate taking 2 to 3 months to do a proper refactor. So you basically need to find your tech lead in that company and talk to them about where you think things can be simplified and extracted and made reusable. And if you don't have that, then you can hire me or if you don't have that, you basically need to go to a third party to get, you know, does that can answer your question? There's not really a nice answer for that. Because if the code base is spaghetti, it's likely that well, there's two possibilities. Either your tech lead doesn't have the ability to simplify it and doesn't spot the problems, or he's not getting enough time and money to fix these problems, and so the prognosis is bad, unfortunately. So I think in either situation, you need to go to your superiors and tell them about this, and tell them, get this video and send it to them and this question, because it's not good. It's not looking good, because most of the money in software development is spent maintaining rubbish crap code. Okay. Okay. What tech stack do you prefer for back end, front end? Well, there isn't there's my preferred. The thing is that there's no correct answer for that, because any developer that's invested their time, money, learning a stack, that's going to be the best for them, and it's going to be their best stack for getting jobs. So you're never going to get a fair answer for that, unfortunately. But I prefer. I've actually changed my mind quite a bit. I try to get away from frameworks, because frameworks often have to be rewritten, because any project that's written in AngularJS, nobody wants to work in AngularJS now, right? And same with Ember. Ember projects, there's hardly anybody that uses Ember. So most companies have settled on React, and that's pretty much because it's something stable. It's not changing the versions every few weeks, and it's a sort of it's maybe not the best software to work with, but people use it because it's stable. I tried to use Svelte for about 6 months. I built a social network for it. Mentor CV, cv.com. It's a startup that I built without any market research, so I'm having trouble getting users on board, but it looks good on my CV, right? I built that in Svelte, which is it's a very interesting framework. But now I'm actually more interested in learning about Solid.js. It's a React type. It uses JSX, but it's a much faster, high performance version of React, better than even some of the other React copycats. It's a really, really powerful code base. But in a sense, to be honest with you, I'm actually getting bored of front end development. I'm moving more into the blockchain space. I'm learning about Solana. I want to learn about NFTs, and I want to work with brands on getting their NFTs to market and that kind of stuff. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, I've worked enough in front end development, but I'm more interested in talking to people like yourself about principles and strategies, because I'm not just a tech guy. I do a podcast as well. I've got the Nikos show and 4 or 5 YouTube channels. So, okay, let's go on a question here. Do you want to read it out for me, Stellis? My voice is a bit so.
Sure. It's actually quite an interesting question. It says, let's say you don't anticipate the imaginary CRM you're working on to be too complex. Would you go with PHP for backend, since that would be a bit cheaper and easier to hire devs, or would you go for Java.net?
I'm going to read that out so that I can get it in my brain a bit. Let's say you don't anticipate the emergency CRM you're working on to be too complicated. Would you go with PHP for backend, since it would be a bit cheaper and easier? Yeah, I don't like Microsoft too much, so I think PHP would be a good option. And PHP has become a lot improved recently, and I've heard very good things about it. The syntax has improved. Probably is that my mic? No. I think PHP is a good choice nowadays. It's lightweight. It's I think it's freestyle. .NET, it's you're investing into Microsoft a lot, not really into open source that much. But I think PHP. What about Node.js? I mean, a lot of companies like Google Cloud use Node for like functions as a service, that kind of stuff. You can share the the front end code with the back end code. So, but in your situation, yeah, I probably would go on with PHP in that situation. Don't like Java. It's my first language, but people just don't really like Java anymore. I think it's not cool. It's mostly outsourced countries that use Java. I think. I don't know. Well, it's quarter to 6. It's not. I'm looking at the wrong. My clock's here saying 6 o'clock. Okay, so let's go back. We'll jump into recruitment. I think that's probably quite an interesting topic. So right now, it's the market's changed. The market has become yeah. Thank you. It's sometimes a bit hard to explain the start invest with PHP. I'm going to leave the chat window open up so I can see questions. So hopefully you can still see my screen. Can you see my screen? Okay. So at the moment, it's a developer's market again. I've been basically I'm in between contracts right now, so I'm basically I'm getting bombarded with roles and stuff. I basically did an interview and I got a job immediately. So at the moment, it's always the case with companies. They reduce the salaries and wages so much in the pandemic, and as soon as the market picks up again, it all jumps up, and everybody's trying to get developers, and people just make decisions too quickly. So the best developers get snapped up quickly. I'm by no means the best developer, but we're going to be at that point in the market again where if when we talk about branding here, we're talking about money being equal, but the candidate picks a different company when he has multiple offers on the table. Now the thing is, now it's a bit different with the pandemic. We're not in the office very much. Some of the things here are not going to be as important. So we're going to just kind of just in time invent this branding. So branding is basically the way that your candidates perceive your company. And this is pretty much more tailored to the candidates that are in demand, because probably the average developer will just take the first job that's offered to them. But when you have candidates that you're wanting to attract that are above market value for what you're paying them, they're going to have a choice, right? So so for example, I'm basically going to work for a car company because they're doing some innovative stuff with technologies, versus working for another company that's interested in what I do. They're basically a household name retail store, and I've had enough retail stores for the last few years, just because they're so big and slow in what they do and stuff like that. So I'm going to work with this kind of cool, innovative startup within a car company almost, and via an agency. So in a sense, as a company, there's not really an excuse for your company not to have a GitHub organization where you're sharing open source code, because it's basically free marketing. So that's one thing, main thing. Basically, you want your company to be the first choice when price is equal. So price is what you're paying. So and technical blogs are important for companies to write. That's makes the candidate think that they're going to be learning new things. They're going to be encouraged to share knowledge, not just keep everything closed in and keep it secret. The best companies always share their tech and their open source and things like that. Recreation. So I don't know how that works with working from home. Maybe have I don't know, an Xbox tournament or something like that. I mean, yeah, I haven't thought about that. Working remotely is a very different experience. It's can it be kind of lonely, because it's really, really immaterial, especially if you've never met a team. my last few clients, I've never met them in person. Some of them I knew personally from a long time ago, but this last, few clients I've had, I didn't meet any of them. So that can be helped if they have, encourage each other to just open your cameras in Scrum meetings in the morning. You make that a rule. It also stops developers that, I don't know, maybe playing the Xbox while you're doing the Scrum meeting. You can see they're focused. It's a challenge. There's the double contracting that goes on sometimes. Encouraging mentoring is important for junior developers because you can really speed up the career process of juniors if you want to attract them. And so you have the sort of graduate programs and mentoring programs that can really, because I didn't have that when I was in my first company. I had to sort of support myself, and I really noticed the difference when I had a senior developer mentoring me. And then meetups are important as well. So inviting people into your office and get to know the company, that can be one of the best hiring opportunities, because people that go to meetups are pretty much better than average developers, because they're not just doing their job, going home and zoning out. They're actually wanting to learn more about technology. So it's the best recruitment thing. And it's kind of things are opening up again in the UK. So I think that meetups are going to be a thing again pretty soon. And people are starved for social contact, especially with working. Stimulating work is important. So find out what your developers like to develop, and don't do things that are drive them crazy, like supporting IE8 or even IE11 for 1% of users. It's really, really annoys developers to support these old crappy browsers just to please their shareholders for 1% of the market that doesn't have whatever reason they can't upgrade the browser. Okay, they probably don't have enough money to buy the products. Just seeing how it is. Maybe it's a bit first world elitist, but that's there's no point supporting old crappy browsers. If you want to get the worst second-rate developers, then support IE11. And installation is all about data cleaning and things like that. So this is part of the job, I guess. Yeah, meetings for the sake of meetings. It depends. Some developers that are really lazy and they're not really that good, they will like lots of meetings. But some developers just don't like meetings. That annoys them, getting sitting around explaining the same things again and again and again. And that oftentimes stand-up meetings in the morning are a waste of time, because when you're working with a code base, you know what your developers are working on because you're reading the tickets. So it's almost pointless telling the whole team what you're doing again. So that's another thing about Agile I don't like, is that these Scrum meetings are always done just to basically have one person employed to do Scrum meetings. And it's a waste of money, to be honest. I wouldn't do Scrum if I had my own startup. Yeah, so yes, okay, you have to decide whether you start early or you wait to find the right person. Yeah, this is a quote I threw in there. I find it interesting. So interviews, it's really pathetic, the industry right now with interviews. It's getting better now, because I had that recent client phone me up, give me the contract. Technical interviews are basically, if you're going to do it with a junior person, or get a senior person to talk to the other developer for even 5 or 10 minutes, and you can find out pretty quick the person knows what they're talking about. So this I don't know why it is with software development. You basically ask people to do take-home tests. You're never going to get a better value. You're never going to get a good senior by giving them a technical test, because they won't need to do their test. They'll find another company that won't ask them to do their test, right? Or if you're going to do it, pay them for the day, full rate, whatever it is, pay their traveling expenses plus a hotel. If you really want to see technical things, you really want to see how good they are, and get them into the company for a day or two, pay them well for it. I just have a really strong opinions about it. I know it's not possible for many companies, but it is really, really, really broken.
I think I want to add something to this. Yeah, I agree. I remember last year when I was looking for like a role, a contract or something. If a company asked me to undergo some technical interview, especially if this was time consuming, I would say no, because I know, next week maybe I have someone begging me to work for them. So I'm like, what's the point? And obviously I was right. I just waited a couple of weeks.
It's laziness, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have better things coming your way, and at some point in your career, you're more used to negotiating on more of a, let's say, partnership basis rather than undergoing this. Unless you want to go into big tech, where I understand why they would do this there, there's no way I would undergo this kind of process for a startup or a scale up or even, you know, a bigger company, to be honest with you.
Yeah, if you have a take-home test, you're doing two things, right? The pros, you're eliminating those that can't code. But anyway, you can fire them anyway. You have a one day notice period, right?
Yeah.
Or you get a below average or average developer.
Yeah.
You're eliminating all the amazing gems that are 10 times developers out there, you know, that are just phenomenally good. And those that are around, you know, and you pay them basically the same as other developers. But they're so quick at what they do. You're not going to get them in your code. You're not going to get them at all. And you're very lucky.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. Okay, so the next slide, interview efficiency. Hiring is expensive, be wise in your resources, multiple people in the pipeline, as compare. Yeah, I don't really, that's just, yeah, the thing of these slides can take a lot of time to do and do it properly. You know, discussions, every client's different, every company's different, everyone has their processes. But I'm just giving you my raw opinion here. Yeah, we've already talked about paid interviews, retraining existing staff. That is also an important aspect. Retraining is probably an underinvested part of recruitment, and something that companies should take note of. So when it comes to, you know, training principles in your staff, you know, you want to be teaching the skills, teaching appropriate skills, reinforcing the skills, measuring progress. Yeah, this is kind of a rough and ready slide that I've been improving upon. So in a sense, we've already talked about challenges for your code base. You have scope creep, lots of separate tasks, bad for devs with low RAM. That's when you have lots of bug fixes. And to be honest, as a contractor, most of the time you're fixing bug fixes in the code base, unfortunately. And the trouble with all these meetings is that a lot of times developers takes them out of the zones where you're developing efficiently. We've talked about reluctance to infactor, feature pressure, scope creep, businesses not tech understanding, not wanting to invest in refactoring, not trusting the refactoring advice, and short-term politics. Deadlines are also another interesting thing. Developers hate the question, how long will this take? Because it's a very, you know, if you have a very clean code base, very well established architecture, then developers should be able to give you good deadlines. So when you're working with really, you know, spaghetti code, deadlines in a sense just compound to the problem and irritates developers when people say, how long do you think this will take? Especially when it's non-technical people and they don't appreciate the complexities of things. Yeah, so I'm pretty much done there, Stelios. Just any more questions? I'm on to answer them. If not, it's been a pleasure to meet everybody.
Perfect. Round of applause. We had a decent turnout today. We're like 11 in total. Any more questions to Nikos before we go?
Any feedback, really appreciated. Give to Stelios or you know, whatever, you can pass it on to me or my website, my email address. I'll put my email address here if anyone wants it. gmail.com. Send me an email and I'll, you know, talk to Stelios as well and prove it, because, you know, I'm a bit like a machine learning program myself. I adapt my teaching strategies. I've done this seminar about 10 times already, and I keep changing it, and it's sort of, you know, it's adapting.
And for those of you who are interested, you can also, we will be able to find an online assisted version of this course in the next few months. This means that we'll provide the full workshop online, but we'll also want to include, as part of the deal, coaching with Nikos. And if you have any issues with the software developers, if you believe you need some help around some of the topics we discussed now, do not hesitate to get in touch with us directly. And we also have a brand new website. I posted the link on the chat. You can find some more details there about the services we provide, as well as some of the events we organize. We organize events all the time relating to data science, AI, software development, product management, project management, pretty much anything a decision maker needs to know to navigate the modern tech landscape. So thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. We hope to see you again soon in some other of our events.
See you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.